Welcome, villagers, to the village hidden in the stories. I'm your guide, AllKage, the creator and author of all the what-if stories you see on this channel, with your awesome suggestions, of course. I write, edit, and produce every story you hear, so if you're wondering who made it, it's me. I hope you enjoy today's video. Be sure to leave your what-if ideas in the comments and subscribe if you're new. Today's story is What If Naruto Was the Holder of the One Piece Part 1. Hope you enjoy the new series, and sorry for me being on a 3-week break. But luckily some things are coming up that will allow me to make more what-ifs and be able to post more, so hopefully the 3-week break was worth it to you guys. Before we dive in, shout-out time. Thanks so much to everyone who comments, keep them coming. And our second shout-outs for my Shinobi Patreon members, Francios Lyman, and Alpha Wolf 1993, a special thank you from me to you guys. If you'd like to support the channel, check out my Patreon, link in the description. For just $5, you can get early access to full-text transcripts, thumbnails, ad-free videos, and updates for my what-ifs. Now, without further ado, let's jump into this what-if. Part 1, The Treasure Appears. Shadows draped the forest of Konohagakure, where the trees bent inward, their branches interwoven into a thick canopy. It looked almost deliberate, as if someone had shaped the foliage by hand. But few would know the one responsible for such quiet craftsmanship. Even under the night sky, this forest stood out, vast, alive, and towering. A second world existed high in the treetops, far above where most villagers could reach. Normally, no one wandered this part of the hidden leaf. But tonight was different. The air hung heavy, tense, the usual sounds of the night, crickets, owls, the rustle of wind through leaves, had vanished. Not even a seasoned shinobi could hear them. Only one sound remained, the ragged rhythm of breathing, and the steady thud of weight hitting wood. It was a simple, semi-coordinated landing, and the one behind it was Naruto Uzumaki. No introduction is needed, you've likely heard of the boy's future legend. But tonight, his story takes a slightly different path. Naruto hoisted the forbidden scroll of the leaf off his back and laid it across the wide branch he was perched on. Flashes of memory ran through his mind, the secret to passing the shinobi test, the thrill of stealing the scroll from his grumpy old geezer with his very own famous jutsu. He was still convinced that after seeing his sexy jutsu, the old man would rank it as an S-rank technique. That would show just how dangerous he really was, not that it mattered right now. Naruto unrolled the scroll, the next part of his test already clear in his head. According to Mizuki, all he needed to do was learn one jutsu from the scroll. But Naruto figured, why stop at 1, 2 jutsu sounded way better. His eyes scanned the contents quickly. The scroll was filled with forbidden techniques, most far beyond anything he'd ever tried before. After a few minutes, 2 entries caught his attention. One was a traditional jutsu, like the rest, the other was different. It wasn't a technique at all, just a seal, a strange one he didn't recognize. It looked like a storage seal. But not like the standard ones used by Academy Sensei. There was something older about it, something more specialized. Naruto couldn't quite tell, but either way, he was going to find out. Now, how did they say to activate these things again? Right, channel chakra into your hand, then tap the seal, simple. Naruto pressed his palm against the strange seal, a pulse of chakra flowing into it. The ink glowed faintly for a moment, then thwump, the seal released its contents in a puff of white smoke. 3 objects appeared before him on the branch, a round, oddly patterned fruit with a deep purple hue and swirling spirals covering its rubbery skin, a worn, wide-brimmed straw hat with a red ribbon. And an old leather-bound book, its cover cracked with age and no title in sight. Naruto blinked, then stared. Huh? He tilted his head, eyeing the strange items like they might suddenly explain themselves. The fruit was like nothing he'd ever seen at the market, its skin looked rubbery, almost fake, and the spirals made his brain itch just looking at it. Okay, definitely not a normal snack, and what's with the hat? Did someone seal their wardrobe in here? He thought, picking up the straw hat and flipping it in his hands. It was light, worn, and somehow nostalgic, though he couldn't say why. The book was no better, no title, no explanation. Just a thick, dusty mystery with pages filled with what looked like scribbled notes. Diagrams, something he wouldn't normally read. This stuff's just junk, not even a single kunai. His stomach interrupted his thoughts with a loud protest. Naruto grimaced, placing a hand over his gut. Ugh, I knew I should have grabbed some ramen before pulling this stunt. His eyes fell back on the fruit. Weird or not, it was technically food, kinda, maybe. Well, it's either this or bark, he muttered. Naruto picked up the fruit and took a bite, one big, determined chomp. And immediately gagged. Bleg, what the hell? It was like chewing on rubber soaked in spoiled milk and fish sauce. Bitter, mushy, and utterly revolting, he staggered back, smacking his lips and hacking as he tried to get the taste off his tongue. Gross, that's gotta be the worst thing I've ever eaten, even moldy miso was better than that. He glared at the fruit as if it had insulted his entire ancestry, tossing it aside, it eventually falling to the grassy plain below, out of sight. Stupid thing, figures it's disgusting and useless. Shaking his head and trying to ignore the aftertaste still clinging to his tongue, Naruto turned his attention to the jutsu he'd originally marked in the scroll. Right, the multi-shadow clone jutsu. He crouched down, eyes focused, the awful taste now just background noise to the excitement starting to build in his chest. It was similar to the standard clone jutsu that the academy taught. The one that he couldn't do, but this one seemed easier since it only needed one hand seal, and making multiple physical clones seemed useful. He grinned, let's do this. He got started right away. It only took about an hour to get it down, though he had to reread the jutsu scroll multiple times. Still, that effort had paid off, it helped him uncover the jutsu's hidden secret. The trick behind the shadow clone technique wasn't just numbers, it was that you gained the memories of your clones. That made it way more useful than he'd ever imagined. Now all he had to do was wait for Mizuki-sensei to show up. Once he did, Naruto could prove himself, pass the class, and maybe even show off to Iruka. If he was lucky, he might get a free bowl of ramen out of it. That thought made the blonde chuckle. Iruka and Mizuki were the only teachers he really trusted. He hadn't talked to Mizuki much, but the man had given him this secret test to finally become a real shinobi. And while Iruka hadn't let him pass before, Naruto knew, deep down, the man believed in him. As the minutes ticked by, Naruto's excitement faded into restlessness. He glanced toward the edge of the branch, where he'd tossed aside the odd items earlier, the book and straw hat still sitting there. He hadn't paid them much attention at first, the jutsu had been the real prize, and that weird fruit had tasted so bad he had completely forgotten about the other two things he had unsealed with it. But now, with Mizuki still not showing up, boredom got the better of him. Naruto stood, brushed the dirt off his knees, and wandered over. With a small smile, the blonde reached for the hat. It was simple, weathered, but somehow, it felt familiar, comfortable, like it was meant to sit on his head. Grinning, he plopped it on. He struck a pose, laughing at himself, until a strange shiver ran down his spine. It wasn't cold, it was weird, like a rush of energy that settled deep in his gut, like something had finally digested. Then, without warning, he slipped on a rock. Whoa. He threw his arm out to catch himself, but instead of landing with a thud, his hand kept going. It stretched forward, yanking the rest of his body with it as it slammed into the tree with a loud thwack. Naruto blinked. Then screamed. What the hell was that? His arm snapped back like a rubber band, slingshotting him onto his back. He rolled twice, groaning in pain and confusion. When he finally sat up, panting, he stared at his hand, and pulled at the skin. It stretched. "I'm stretchy." He looked down at his arm, then at the straw hat now lying crooked on his head, and the strange book still closed beside him. "Oh man," he whispered, eyes wide. "What's going on?" Naruto sat there in stunned silence, flexing his fingers as his arm slowly retracted to normal. It didn't hurt, it felt natural. Like his body had always been made of rubber. But that couldn't be right. He was a ninja, well, not yet. But he certainly wasn't some kind of walking slingshot. What was different? Why was he now as stretch, maybe more so, than a rubber band? Then realization came to the blonde, the quick thought of what he had eaten earlier this night returned. Wait. Naruto's eyes narrowed. That fruit, it was really the only answer for the change. Aside from the book and the straw hat, it was the only unknown. Maybe he shouldn't have eaten weird-looking fruits. He crouched there, staring at the thing like it might suddenly lunge at him. Then his gaze shifted to the book, still lying closed like it was waiting. "I hate reading," Naruto grumbled, grabbing it anyway. "But I really hate not knowing what the hell just happened to my arm." The pages were filled with strange symbols at first, but as he flipped further, the language began to shift into something more readable, almost like it was reshaping itself for him. His eyes caught on a hand-drawn sketch, the same fruit, swirly patterns, odd texture, exactly the same. "Gomu Gomu no Mi," he read slowly, squinting. "A devil fruit?" His brows furrowed as he read the short paragraph beneath it. "A cursed fruit from beyond the seas. Grants the user a body of pure rubber, removes the ability to swim forever. Once eaten, it cannot be undone. Rare, powerful, and dangerous in the wrong hands." Naruto leaned back, jaw slack. "Body made of rubber, can't swim, wait, what?" He slapped the book shut, panicking. "That fruit cursed me." But then, as the words sank in deeper, his expression shifted. Rubber body, unbreakable, stretchable, untouchable. His panic faded into a crooked grin. "Okay, that's actually kinda awesome." Naruto stared at his hand again, stretching one finger out slowly. It extended like warm taffy, smooth and effortless, then snapped back with a light twip. He didn't speak for a moment. Instead, he thought. "Rubber, I'm made of rubber now, so what does that mean?" His brow furrowed, not in confusion, but in focus. The grin faded, replaced by something rare on Naruto's face: stillness, thoughtfulness. "I don't take damage the same way anymore," he realized. "Punches, kicks, maybe even kunai. If my body stretches, then force doesn't land the same either. I could bounce things off, maybe even reflect attacks." He flexed his arm again, watching the muscles ripple in a way they never had before. "And if I can stretch," he continued, "then I can attack from far away. Surprise people, launch myself, I could move like a slingshot, jump farther, hit harder, maybe even dodge stuff I couldn't before." Naruto's eyes narrowed in excitement. "And if my clones are physical copies of me," he muttered, "then it's clear they will have the same properties that I do." He reached for the book again, flipping back to the diagram of the fruit. "Can't swim, that sucks," he admitted. "But I barely even know how to swim anyway." He smirked to himself. "I just gotta get strong enough that I'll never fall in again." Then, rising to his feet, Naruto clenched his fist, and stretched it forward. It whipped out several feet ahead, striking a tree trunk with a solid crack before snapping back like a yo-yo. His heart skipped a beat, then he grinned, big, wide, full of wonder. This was actually kinda cool. He adjusted the straw hat on his head, eyes glowing with possibility. I'm gonna be the strongest ninja the village has ever seen, and now I've got something even crazier to show them. Before he could get lost in thoughts of all the wild moves he could pull off with this new power, a sudden thud landed on the branch behind him. Naruto spun around, half surprised, until his face lit up with a grin. The look wasn't returned. Standing there, steady and stern, was one of his teachers. Not the one he'd been expecting, but still, someone he respected. "Hey, Iruka," Naruto called out, cheerfully adjusting the straw hat on his head. He bent down to gather the things he'd laid out across the branch. He closed the forbidden scroll carefully, tucking it under one arm, and picked up the strange book without hesitation, slipping it into his shinobi pouch like it was second nature. Iruka didn't speak right away. Instead, his eyes scanned Naruto from head to toe, like he was checking for wounds, or danger, or something worse. Then his voice finally came. "Naruto, do you have any idea how much trouble you're in?" The words hit harder than expected. Naruto's grin faltered slightly, replaced by a furrowed brow and a puzzled tilt of his head. Trouble," he repeated, scratching his cheek. "What are you talking about? I thought this was the special test." Iruka's expression shifted in an instant, confusion now overtaking the stern edge of his face. His brows drew together tightly. "What?" "This," Naruto held up the scroll a little. "Mizuki-sensei said this was the secret test to become a genin. All I had to do was take the scroll, learn one jutsu, and wait for you guys to find me. And I nailed it, by the way, shadow clones and everything." Iruka's mouth parted slightly, eyes widening. The pieces started to fall into place, his gaze flicked briefly to the scroll, then to the book now hidden in Naruto's pouch, then back to Naruto himself, like everything was unraveling in real time. "Mizuki told you that?" "Yeah," Naruto said brightly, pointing toward the forest. "He's supposed to meet me out here actually." Iruka's eyes darkened. And for a second, Naruto thought he saw something that looked like fear flicker across his face. He took one step forward, raising a hand. "Naruto, listen to me, Mizuki lied to you. That scroll is forbidden for a reason." The sound of wind slicing through leaves interrupted him, and both heads turned sharply as a presence hit the branch behind them. Another figure landed, fast, smooth, and smiling in a way that made Naruto's skin crawl. "Mizuki-sensei." "There you are," he said calmly, eyes sharp and gleaming in the moonlight. "I was starting to think you'd opened that scroll and gotten yourself hurt." Naruto blinked again, confused by Iruka's sudden tension, and Mizuki's sudden smile. Something was wrong. Really wrong. "Naruto, get behind me," Iruka said calmly, though his voice carried an edge. His eyes had narrowed, sharp with focus, as he stepped forward and moved the blonde boy behind his back. Naruto obeyed, still confused, the forbidden scroll now slung tightly across his back. The rush of excitement he'd felt earlier, learning the shadow clone jutsu, discovering whatever strange ability that fruit gave him, was gone. In its place was a thick, heavy tension. What did Iruka mean? Mizuki lied. Wasn't this supposed to be the special graduation test? And why, all of a sudden, did Mizuki's presence feel dangerous? "Naruto," Mizuki called out from the opposite tree branch. His voice louder now. "Give me the scroll." It came fast, polite, even gentle, but there was something sharp hidden underneath. Naruto felt it. "Don't listen to him, Naruto," Iruka shouted. "He tricked you, there was no test, he used you to steal that scroll, for himself." Naruto turned to Iruka, wide-eyed. "What are you talking about?" Iruka's face was firm, but not angry, hurt, disappointed. "This man, he may have been your teacher, and my friend once. But now, he's nothing but a traitor." Naruto clenched his fists, his jaw tightened, he turned his gaze to Mizuki, who still stood tall and relaxed on the far branch, arms folded across his chest, that same unsettling smirk on his face. Then Mizuki slowly held out one hand, his voice loud and dripping with practiced charm. "Naruto, Iruka's the one lying to you," he said. "He doesn't want you to have that scroll, he doesn't want you to get stronger, because the truth is, this village has always wanted to keep you weak." Naruto didn't move. He didn't need Iruka to say anything, he could feel it, the shift, the pressure. Mizuki's words were smooth, but they didn't land right, they felt off. That smirk, that tone. It was like Mizuki was trying to wear the face of a teacher, but underneath was something else entirely. Something dangerous, and Naruto wasn't falling for it. Mizuki's smirk faded, just slightly. He narrowed his eyes as he realized Naruto wasn't buying it. "Tch, stubborn little brat," he muttered, before trying a different angle. "Tell me something, Naruto," Mizuki called out again, his voice colder now, but still holding that mocking sweetness. "Do you really think the villagers hate you for no reason? Haven't you ever wondered why they glare at you? Why they whisper behind your back, why they keep their kids away from you like you're some kind of monster?" Naruto stiffened. The words stung, because they were true, he had wondered, every day. Every time someone avoided him in the street, every time a door closed just a bit too quickly. "Stop it," Iruka roared. A kunai whistled through the air, flashing silver under the moonlight, and embedded itself into the branch just inches from Mizuki's feet. "That information is forbidden," Iruka snapped, voice sharp with fury. "You're only digging your grave deeper." Mizuki clicked his tongue, giving Iruka a glare, so much for the quiet route. With a flash of motion, he leapt from his perch, fast, too fast. Iruka barely had time to react before Mizuki crashed into him, the two clashing midair and tumbling through the foliage in a blur of steel and fists. Leaves scattered into the night as the two collided against tree trunks and branches. Naruto backed away instinctively, the forbidden scroll weighing heavy on his shoulders as he tried to process what he was seeing. His hands clenched. They weren't just sparring, this wasn't training. This was a fight to kill. And despite Iruka's best efforts, Mizuki's strength showed through. With one brutal strike, Mizuki drove his knee into Iruka's gut and slammed him back against a thick tree trunk. The bark cracked from the force as Iruka let out a pained grunt, his limbs slumping for a moment. "Pinned." Mizuki grinned viciously now, stepping back just enough to lift one of the giant shuriken from his back, holding it high. Naruto's breath caught. "Now that the interruption's out of the way," Mizuki hissed, "let me finish what your precious teacher tried to keep from you." His voice rose, echoing through the forest. "You're the nine-tailed fox, that monster that nearly destroyed this village 12 years ago, that demon sealed away in a baby's body." He pointed the massive shuriken at Naruto like an executioner's blade. "That baby was you." Naruto's eyes went wide, a cold sweat clung to his back. His body didn't move. "Iruka didn't tell you because he's just like the rest of them, you killed his parents. They all smile to your face, but deep down, they hate you, they'll always hate you." The words hit harder than any punch. Naruto stood frozen, the weight of the scroll on his back suddenly nothing compared to the weight pressing down on his chest. "You're the nine-tailed fox." That sentence repeated in his head, over and over again. He didn't even realize he'd stopped breathing. Him, a monster? Was that really why the villagers hated him, why he was always alone? Why no one ever looked at him like he mattered? He thought about the cold stares, the parents pulling their kids away, the whispers behind his back. It all started to click, too much, too fast. His birthday, the same day of the Kyuubi attack. His fists loosened, the grip on his resolve wavered. No, that can't be true. His mind swam with everything, Iruka's words, Mizuki's grin, the strange power coursing through his limbs after eating that fruit, the scroll on his back, the straw hat now tilted slightly on his head. Everything was noise. So he almost didn't hear Mizuki shout, "Then die like the monster you are." The sound of wind slicing through the air snapped him back to reality. Mizuki was mid-air, the giant shuriken raised high, coming straight for him. Naruto's eyes widened, he didn't have time to dodge. But someone else did. Thud. Time seemed to slow as Iruka appeared in front of him like a blur, taking the full brunt of the attack. The blade slammed into his back, piercing flesh with a sickening sound as Iruka dropped to his knees, arms shielding Naruto with everything he had left. "Why?" Naruto whispered, eyes wide, staring up at the man now bleeding in front of him, shielding him. Iruka gritted his teeth, his breathing labored. Pain etched across his face, but still, he stood firm. "Because, you're not the fox." Those words hit Naruto harder than the truth Mizuki had thrown at him, his mind reeled, but Iruka kept going. "You're my student, the village's top prankster." He coughed, blood lacing his words, but his voice remained steady. "You're nothing like the Ninetales that attacked 12 years ago. You're not it, you're its jailer, you didn't hurt anyone that night, I just wish more people could see that." Naruto stared, the weight of those words pressing against everything Mizuki had said, cutting through the doubt. But before the moment could settle, Mizuki's boot crashed into Iruka's side, sending him flying. The older ninja was launched off the shuriken with a violent thud, slamming into a lower tree branch before crashing into the undergrowth below. Mizuki landed lightly on the branch, watching Iruka's limp form disappear into the foliage below. His expression twisted with something between disgust and disappointment. "Tch, stupid fool." He turned his gaze back to Naruto, shaking his head. "I didn't want to kill him, you know. Iruka always talked big about the will of fire, about protecting this rotten village, but I thought he had some sense." Mizuki scoffed, voice dripping with venom. "Never thought he'd throw his life away for a monster like you." Naruto didn't flinch, but his fists clenched. "Oh, don't look so surprised," Mizuki continued, stepping forward with a smirk. "You think anyone really cares about you, you're just a time bomb they're too scared to defuse. All this nonsense about you being one of them, it's a joke." And Iruka, he was the punchline. He laughed, loud and cruel. "You should have seen your face when I said it, like a kicked puppy, pathetic." Naruto's head lowered slightly, hat casting a shadow over his eyes, clenching his fist as if to ready an attack. The man saw this, but Mizuki didn't stop. "You've got nothing, no family, no power, just a big mouth and a demon in your gut. You think you can beat me, how?" Then the laughter stopped. Because Naruto looked up. And he was done listening. "You want to know how?" Naruto said, voice low but shaking with fury. "I'm going to take what you did to Iruka-sensei." His hands came together in a sharp clap, and return it over 1,000 times. Mizuki blinked. "What?" A gust of wind blew across the trees. Naruto's chakra surged, dozens of clouds of smoke burst into existence across the branches, trunks, and treetops, until they numbered in the hundreds. Everywhere Mizuki looked, there were Narutos, silent, staring, waiting. His eyes widened in disbelief. "The hell?" Naruto stepped forward, the real one, his voice ringing through the trees with the strength of every clone behind him. "You messed with the wrong demon." For a few seconds, Naruto stood still, just breathing. The wind stirred around him, rustling leaves and branches as hundreds of clones mirrored his silence, but his mind was anything but quiet. "You're not the fox, you're its jailer. You're my student. I just wish more people could see that." Naruto's hands slowly lowered to his sides, he meant it. Iruka hadn't just protected him, he'd understood him. Stood between him and a blade without hesitation. Not out of duty, but because he believed in him. In that moment, something in Naruto clicked. He wasn't alone, not anymore. Iruka-sensei, he whispered under his breath, eyes sharpening. Mizuki, still reeling, took a step back. What are you mumbling about now? Naruto raised his hand and pointed. You're done. With that, the clones all launched forward at once. Mizuki barely had time to react before the first fist stretched unnaturally, slamming into his jaw with a sickening snap. What the? Another blow came from the side, a rubber punch that hit like a spring-loaded hammer. Then another, and another. Dozens of shadow clones swarmed him, each using Naruto's elastic limbs to launch fists with devastating speed and force, stretching between branches and striking from impossible angles. Gum gum, clone, barrage, Naruto shouted, his voice echoing through the forest. Mizuki's body was flung back and forth like a ragdoll, unable to find footing, breath, or defense. His eyes wide in confusion, he barely managed a gurgled grunt as the final blow sent him spiraling into the forest floor. The ground cracked beneath the impact. Silence fell again. Naruto stood at the edge of the branch, panting lightly, arms crossed, hundreds of clones around him like a silent army, his eyes were locked on the crater below. That was for Iruka-sensei. Naruto landed beside Mizuki's unconscious form with a light thud, dust kicking up from the crater. The man was out cold, bruised, broken, and barely breathing. The clones had vanished, their job done. Naruto stood over the body for just a second longer. The anger still burning quietly in his chest, but then he turned away. Iruka-sensei. He darted through the broken trees, leaping down levels of the forest canopy until he found him, slumped against the base of a tree, blood on his vest and scratches along his face. But he was alive. Sensei, Naruto dropped to his knees beside him, reaching out to help. Iruka cracked one eye open, breathing heavily, but a small smile managed to form on his face. You really did a number on him. You're hurt bad, Naruto said, panic creeping into his voice. We have to get you to the hospital. Wait, Iruka interrupted weakly, lifting a shaky hand. Close your eyes, Naruto. Naruto blinked. Huh, what are you? Just for a second, Iruka said again, more firmly this time. Please. Still confused, Naruto frowned, but obeyed. He squeezed his eyes shut. There was a pause, then he felt it, something light and cloth-like pressed to his forehead. A slight tug as it was tied gently behind his head. You can open them now, Iruka whispered. Naruto opened his eyes slowly and raised a hand to his forehead. His fingers brushed cool metal, engraved with the symbol of the hidden leaf. He looked down at Iruka in shock. Is this? Iruka's voice was soft, but clear. You graduated, Naruto, you're a shinobi now. Naruto's breath caught in his chest. He looked at his reflection in a piece of broken metal nearby. From one of Mizuki's giant shuriken. There he was, straw hat hanging proudly from his back, and now, the forehead protector of a true ninja resting just above his eyes. For the first time in his life, he didn't feel like an outsider. He felt like himself. Naruto Uzumaki. Shinobi of the Hidden Leaf. One day time skip. The afternoon sun hung high above the Hidden Leaf village, casting warm light across the tiled roofs and bustling streets. It was the kind of day that usually made Naruto feel excited, itching to run across rooftops or prank a few villagers. But today, that excitement was replaced by something else. He walked with a purpose, arms crossed tightly, his new headband glinting on his forehead. The straw hat tied loosely to his back. Each step up the stone stairs of the Hokage Tower felt heavier than the last, like he was marching toward something bigger than he understood. Why did Hokage GG call me up here, he thought, frowning a little. I didn't do anything wrong. He tried to laugh it off, but his thoughts kept circling back: the forbidden scroll, Mizuki, Iruka-sensei getting hurt, everything from that night, including his current changes. And now, an Umbu telling him to urgently see the Hokage. It must have been serious, but he had no clue what this was about. A different Umbu, one planted at the entrance, gave him a brief glance but didn't stop him. That only made it feel more serious. Maybe I'm in trouble, or maybe he just wants to talk. Naruto gripped the strap of his pouch. TCH, doesn't matter, it's not like I have to worry too much, it's GG for crying out loud. He reached the tall wooden doors to the Hokage's office and paused for a moment. The warmth of the midday sun didn't reach inside the tower. The moment he pushed the door open, the air changed, and the third Hokage was waiting. He had never seen the old man like this before, not when it came to him. There was no warmth in the Hokage's eyes, no gentle smile or familiar "hello, my boy." The man before him wasn't the kind, pipe-smoking grandfather figure Naruto had grown used to. This was the Hokage, the leader of the village. Serious, focused, unshakable. For the first time in a long while, Naruto hesitated. The stern expression staring back at him knocked the confidence right out of his step. His usual grin didn't even try to show itself. I'm definitely in trouble, he thought, swallowing hard. Still, he forced his legs to move and took a few cautious steps closer to the desk. No paperwork, no distractions, just Hiruzen, sitting in complete silence, waiting. Naruto finally stopped a few feet in front of him, and only then did the man speak. "Anbu," Hiruzen said quietly, not taking his eyes off the boy. "Leave us." Naruto blinked. That wasn't what he expected. There was no sound, no flicker of chakra. But suddenly, the room felt emptier, less alive. Then, without a word, Hiruzen reached beneath the desk and tapped something. A small click echoed in the room, and with it, another shift. He couldn't explain it, but the air itself felt different now. Like the village outside no longer mattered. Naruto glanced toward the window, and sure enough, everything looked the same: rooftops, villagers, the distant clouds. But in this room, it felt like he and the Hokage were the only two people left in the world. And Naruto didn't know if that comforted him, or terrified him. What was that? Naruto asked, more quiet than he had ever been in a long time. Part of him just trying to listen the mod. The old man, however, didn't sigh, or act like he didn't care for the question, or think the question was just childish curiosity. He just answered, firmly and quickly. "It is a privacy seal, one made to block out any unwanted listening or prying eyes." That explained why he felt like the whole village was gone, even though it was right outside. But Naruto didn't get to think anything else, before the man spoke again. There were multiple accounts for the forbidden scroll of sealing being taken from the Hokage tower, the man started. Umbu, many Jonin and Chunin later on, and even my own account. The last bit of that sentence was said with just enough hint of annoyance for Naruto to realize what the man meant. "The sexy jutsu," Hiruzen started once more, placing his head in his palm in mock disbelief. "A dangerous jutsu indeed, I'll give you that, Naruto." The blonde stopped himself from laughing, making sure to keep calm in the moment, not wanting to be in even more trouble. "But what I don't get, is why exactly you stole the forbidden scroll, how you couldn't have figured out for yourself, that Mizuki was lying to you." That hit Naruto deep, his blood boiling just a bit before he realized what he was about to do. "He tricked me and I fell for it," he yelled out. "That doesn't matter," Hiruzen yelled back, anger sounding in his voice as he slammed his hands onto his desk. Naruto's eyes widened just a bit. He stepped back, and the anger disappeared from him completely, a look of realization crossed Hiruzen's face, making the man double over before taking his hands off the desk. The Hokage sat back down, rubbing his temple while letting out a low sigh, his voice becoming calm once more. "Look, Naruto, I know you are smarter and more skilled than you let on," Hiruzen started again, still keeping his stare on his desk. "Hell, even some of your classmates have noticed by now. Just as much as being loud and impulsive is a part of you, being clever and headstrong is also in your repertoire, so why couldn't you have figured it out?" Naruto's eyes softened. He hadn't expected those words from anyone. He already knew he was smarter than he let on, it's just, his impulsive nature sort of blinded everyone from seeing it. Maybe GG was right, he had been too gullible. He had saw the signs, so why didn't he stop? Naruto let out a sigh, his thoughts festering as he lowered his head. Now looking at his feet, he clenched his fist. It took him a few seconds before he spoke again. "I was desperate," he said quietly, only this time not out of worry. He continued when he saw how calm Hiruzen was, deciding it was only right to keep explaining. "I was at my last line, my last prank, and my last trick. If I didn't pass the shinobi exam this year, I wouldn't have been able to come back the next. That was probably the worst part, the fact that you could take the shinobi exams as many 3 times on your 3rd year, but on your final year, if you didn't make it you were kicked out. I forced myself to ignore the signs," he began again. "Made myself get tricked so I could hold on to some form of hope, that I could still get to be a ninja, to take that seat away from you when I was older." When Naruto was finished, Hiruzen let out a sigh. He looked to be thinking for a moment, and Naruto just couldn't tell what was on the man's mind. The Hokage's hand lowered, and quickly, he looked back at Naruto. "Naruto, I understand your concern for failing the test, but I had precautions in place just in case you didn't pass." Naruto looked away at that, just feeling a bit of disappointment in himself as he didn't meet his GG's gaze. "While you wouldn't be a shinobi, you could have done well in other fields, or even I could have given you your own test, as someone with chakra problems has already passed that test the year before you and is currently a Taijutsu specialist training under a powerful shinobi." That last bit was interesting, a shinobi that only knew Taijutsu, and he was around his age. But now, after everything that has happened with the Forbidden Scroll, with you and Mizuki, the civilian council is calling for your head. They want to. I won't let them harm you, Naruto, but you have to understand that want a punishment for you, and your situation can get worse if the civilians try to take it into their own hands. So I'm not in trouble? No, not yet at least. I just needed this meeting to make sure you would stay careful, and with your new passing, change your ways of being the village prankster. I'm not saying to fully change yourself, just to be more Allarat, and more importantly, consider the responsibilities of being a ninja and a Hokage. I mean, just what do you think being a shinobi means, and for that matter, what does being the Hokage mean? Otherwise, you are not in any trouble. I just need the final account to prosecute Mizuki, as well as the knowledge on this new power you have. How do you know about my rubber body? I won't say much, other than I was able to keep an eye on you after you knocked me out. Your abilities are interesting, and the fact that fruit was in the Forbidden Scroll concerns me just a bit. What was that? Naruto asked, quieter than he'd been in a long time, a whisper, really, half curiosity, half instinct to not upset the mood any further. The old man didn't sigh or wave off the question. He didn't treat it like childish nonsense or something unworthy of attention. He simply answered, voice firm and direct. It's a privacy seal, Hiruzen said. One designed to block any unwanted ears or prying eyes. That explained it, why the world outside felt so far away. Even though it was right there, just past the glass. But Naruto didn't have time to dwell on that feeling. Hiruzen was already speaking again. There were multiple reports of the Forbidden Scroll of Sealing being stolen from the tower, the Hokage began, tone heavy. Anbu saw it, several jonin and chunin confirmed it later, even my own account. The way he said that last part had an edge to it, just enough annoyance that Naruto understood the implication. The sexy jutsu, Hiruzen muttered, pressing his forehead into his palm in mock disbelief. A dangerous technique indeed, I'll give you that, Naruto. Naruto nearly laughed, but caught himself. This wasn't the time. The Hokage dropped his hand back to the desk, the mood shifting again. What I don't understand, Hiruzen said, eyes narrowing slightly, is how you didn't realize Mizuki was lying to you, why you didn't figure it out. That struck something deep in Naruto. His hands clenched at his sides, heat rising in his chest before he caught himself. He tricked me, and I fell for it, he snapped, unable to stop the words. That doesn't matter, Hiruzen barked, slamming both hands on the desk. The sudden outburst echoed through the sealed room like a clap of thunder. Naruto flinched, eyes wide, stumbling a step back. The anger vanished from Hiruzen's face almost immediately. A shadow of guilt passed over him. The old man sighed and slowly sat back down, rubbing at his temple. His voice returned calm, if a bit wearier. Look, Naruto, I know you're smarter than you let on, more skilled too, he said, eyes lowered. Hell, even some of your classmates have noticed. He looked up again, gaze sharper now, not scolding, but searching. Being loud, impulsive, sure, that's a part of you, but so is being clever, so is being headstrong. So why couldn't you see the signs? Naruto's eyes softened, he hadn't expected that. Most people assumed he was dumb, or just too hyper to care about anything important. But Hiruzen, he saw him. And maybe he was right. Maybe he had seen the signs. Maybe he just didn't want to. Naruto let out a breath, lowering his head as he stared at his feet, fists tightening at his sides. It took a few seconds before he spoke. I was desperate, he muttered, not out of fear this time, but honesty. He glanced up and saw the Hokage waiting, not judging, just listening, so he continued. I was on my last chance, my last prank, my last shot. If I didn't pass this year, I wouldn't have been allowed to come back. Hiruzen's brow furrowed slightly, but he said nothing. Naruto pressed on. I forced myself to believe it, forced myself to trust Mizuki. I wanted to believe him, because it gave me hope that I could finally be a ninja. That maybe, someday, I could sit in your chair. The words hung in the air. Hiruzen exhaled slowly, leaning back in his seat. He looked thoughtful now, quiet. Naruto, he said at last, I understand being afraid to fail, but I had precautions in place in case you didn't pass. Naruto looked away, shame prickling at him. You wouldn't have been kicked out, there were other paths, alternate testing, specialized training. You're not the first student with unique chakra issues. In fact, someone else passed just last year with nothing but taijutsu, and he's now training under a highly skilled shinobi. Naruto blinked, someone his age, passed only with taijutsu, now that was interesting. But the blonde's thoughts quickly went back to the Hokage, as the man steepled his fingers onto his desk. Because of the forbidden scroll, and Mizuki's betrayal, the civilian council is calling for your head. Naruto's stomach lurched, images of angry shopkeepers and stone-cold glares flashed through his mind. They want retribution, Hiruzen continued, voice grave. I won't let them harm you, Naruto, but you must understand, if they feel the village government fails to act, some may try to take punishment into their own hands. So, I'm not in trouble, Naruto asked, hope and worry tangling in his chest. Not yet, the old man answered. This meeting is to ensure you stay careful, and, now that you've passed, to remind you the village prankster routine has to change. Naruto lowered his eyes. I'm not asking you to become someone else, Hiruzen said more gently. Just be alert, a shinobi, and especially a future Hokage, must shoulder responsibility. Think Naruto, what does being a ninja truly mean, and what does being Hokage mean? The question struck deep. However, Naruto didn't believe he could give an answer without fear of it being wrong. But as he began to wonder about such an answer, Hiruzen spoke. Otherwise, the Hokage went on, you are not in any immediate danger from me. I simply need your final statement to prosecute Mizuki, and I need to understand this new power you awakened. Naruto blinked. How do you know about my rubber body? A faint, knowing smile tugged at Hiruzen's lips. Let's just say I managed to keep an eye on you after you incapacitated me. A faint sense of pride hit Naruto. He had really KO'd the old man. Your abilities are fascinating, Hiruzen added, expression turning sober again, and the fact that such a fruit was sealed inside the forbidden scroll troubles me. We'll research it together, but first, I want you to give your account as it is the only one missing from the report. Naruto straightened, determination sparking behind his eyes. With that, the blonde began explaining his side of everything. He spared no detail, describing Mizuki's manipulation, his own desperation, and the events that followed. He even explained the strange new abilities he discovered, piecing together that his rubber-like body had something to do with the mysterious fruit he consumed. He also described learning the shadow clone jutsu and how naturally it came to him in the moment. Once Naruto finished, Hiruzen carefully filed the account away. He marked several details as classified, especially those regarding Naruto's new powers. The abilities you've gained, Hiruzen said seriously, must be kept secret for now. If the wrong people learn of them, especially about that fruit, it could put you in danger. Neither Naruto nor the Hokage had any solid information on the fruit responsible for the transformation. The only clue was the old book Naruto had taken from the scroll's seal. Which is why they began to read it together, hoping it would provide answers. Inside, they found records of an ancient world, one that existed before chakra, before shinobi, before jutsu itself. A world of powerful individuals and strange abilities that defied the laws they knew. Multiple accounts of these fruits, and other powerful abilities made them wonder. But the book ended prematurely, so there wasn't that much to go off of. But what were the chances? Could there be other fruits out there, other items? Maybe, maybe not. Naruto stepped out of the Hokage tower into the midday sunlight, the weight of Hiruzen's words still heavy in his mind. He forced the memories of his and Hiruzen's questions about the book and the fruit out of his head, in favor for something else the old man had said that sparked interest in Naruto. What does it truly mean to be a shinobi? As he bounded down the stone steps, Naruto turned the question over and over. To him, a shinobi had always meant freedom, the freedom to run, to prank, to push himself beyond every limit. But everyone else spoke of duty, loyalty to village, to mission, to honor. Which was the right view? Was freedom the path Hiruzen wanted me to see? Or was there a balance between duty and choice? Naruto wondered, and more pressingly, how would that help me become Hokage? He sighed, swinging his arms as he walked through the marketplace. Despite the bright orange of his jumpsuit and the unruly spike of his blonde hair, designed, deep down, to draw every eye in the village, he knew something had to change. Not his personality, that loud, impulsive spark was 100% him, and he wouldn't trade it for anything. But he had to stop treating being a shinobi like one big game. He needed to be more aware, more deliberate, in short, more responsible without losing himself. So where do I start, he thought, his headband pressing lightly against his forehead. As he said that, Naruto paused, his gaze dropping to his feet, then slowly lifting to his hands. When he looked up again, he realized exactly where he was, the Ninja Tools District. The street was lined with shops, each offering a different array of gear and weapons for shinobi. A small grin tugged at his lips. This was perfect timing. Maybe it was time to ditch the bright kill-me orange outfit. Ninjas were meant to move in silence, and even if it wasn't exactly his style, he could admit that some missions might require a little less flash and a lot more subtlety. The best part, the shops couldn't turn him away anymore, not now that he was officially a shinobi. Not that he planned to test his luck with every villager in the Leaf. But still, the thought of being allowed to walk into a store like anyone else, it felt good. Naruto stepped into the first shop he saw, barely even checking the sign above the door. He didn't know where to start, and the second he stepped inside, he realized just how lost he really was. The interior was lined with polished weapons, glimmering kunai, racks of scrolls, and shinobi gear of all kinds. Everything looked so well maintained and organized, it made the place feel more like a miniature museum of war than a store. But to Naruto, it was amazing. His eyes widened as he walked past a row of swords mounted neatly on the wall. Some curved, some jagged, some small and precise. He had never seen weapons like these in person before. "Whoa! These are so cool," he said out loud, unable to help himself. His voice echoed slightly in the quiet store, and his awe was quickly broken by a soft voice behind him. "Finding everything okay?" The voice was kind, calm, but carrying a spark of friendliness that made him glance back quickly. The girl standing there looked a bit older than him, maybe by a year or two. Her dark hair was tied into two neat buns on either side of her head, and her dark eyes were curious, but not judging. She wore a sleeveless red top and loose pants, clearly dressed for movement. Naruto blinked, a little sheepish now that someone had caught him gawking like an academy kid. Yeah. I mean, sorta, I was looking for something." She smiled at that. "Well, if you tell me what you're looking for, I can help you find it." Naruto turned his gaze back toward the swords briefly. A part of him still whispered how cool it would be to walk out of here with a blade strapped to his back. One of those long ones that said "I'm a ninja" without even needing words. But then, "Be more aware," Hiruzen's voice echoed in his head. He blinked and shook his head, clearing the thought away. He turned back to the girl with a grin. "Yeah, I was actually looking for some shinobi clothes. You know, something with less orange, but still with a little orange. Oh, and sleeveless. And not too tight, and, he scratched his cheek. Maybe with, like, a hidden life jacket built into it?" The girl stared at him for a second, then let out a short laugh. "That's oddly specific." Naruto gave a nervous chuckle. "Yeah, I guess it is." She tilted her head with an amused smirk. "I've seen a lot of new genin come through here. They always stare at those swords with the same look you just had, like they're picking their signature weapon or something." Naruto blinked. "Is that bad?" She shook her head. "No, it's just funny, you had the same look, but then you walked away. Most don't. I was the same way when I first started. Thought I'd be the next big sword master or something." Naruto laughed along with her now, less nervous and more relaxed. "Guess I'm not the only one." "Definitely not." She stepped past him, gesturing for him to follow. "We don't have anything with a life jacket built in, sorry, but we do have something sleeveless, loose, with a splash of orange. It's light and reinforced, so it should hold up well in missions." Naruto nodded. "That sounds great, actually." As they started walking through the store, he glanced at her curiously. She seemed nice, not annoyed, not brushing him off. Just helpful. "Hey, thanks," he said suddenly. "For, helping." She glanced over her shoulder and smiled. "No problem, it's kind of my thing." "Oh. And the name's Tenten, by the way." Naruto grinned. "I'm Naruto, nice to meet ya." Tenten led Naruto down a narrow aisle near the back of the store, weaving past mannequin displays and folded gear until she stopped in front of a modest rack tucked against the wall. "Here it is," she said, tugging a black, sleeveless puff jacket from the hanger. It's reinforced, light, and keeps your movement loose. Might be a little big on you, but you'll grow into it. Naruto reached out, his hand brushing the padded fabric. It was sleek but flexible, just thick enough to give the illusion of armor without actually weighing him down. His fingers tightened around it as a strange comfort settled in his chest. This felt right. Tenten stepped back and added, "Oh, I just remembered, we've got matching black shinobi shorts and sandals too. Even black cloth for your headband, if you want the full change. Want me to grab those?" Naruto gave a quick nod. "Yeah, sure, I'll check them out." With that, Tenten dashed off toward the front. Naruto stayed behind, jacket still in hand. He lifted it slowly, imagining how it would sit on his shoulders, how it would feel in the middle of a fight. The puffiness would let his arms move freely, keep his body flexible, and with how his new powers worked, that mattered more than ever. Rubber stretches better when it isn't restricted. He could already picture it, winding up a punch. Letting his arm draw back and stretch, the jacket not holding him back, not pinning his elbows in. It would absorb some recoil, maybe even let him build momentum with his swings if he moved right. The extra give in the fabric meant faster strikes, looser movement, cleaner launches. A smirk tugged at his lips. "Yeah, this'll work." After a few more minutes of waiting, Naruto's energy got the better of him. Jacket still draped over his arm, he drifted toward another section of the store, weaving through shelves until he stumbled into a display labeled, "Field Essentials, Genin Starter Pack." His eyes widened. The table was stocked with all the classic shinobi tools, freshly sharpened kunai. Polished shuriken, clean holsters, coiled wire, smoke bombs, paper bombs, and even small pouches of caltrops. Tucked in beside the weapons were less obvious items, scrolls, ink, a few slim brushes, and sealing paper. Naruto blinked. Why the hell do I need writing stuff? He tilted his head, but even if he didn't get it yet, it was part of the starter kit. And honestly, it was better than what he already had by miles. He glanced down at his own dull kunai, worn and chipped from repeated use in tree bark and practice logs. His shuriken were no better, bent at the tips, the edges barely able to scratch wood, let alone anything serious. Junk, he realized, they were practically training toys at this point. Guess I could scrap the old ones for parts, or just keep them as a reminder. His gaze wandered back to the clean, polished gear. He could also use some serious shuriken training. His aim was still garbage. Just having new tools wouldn't make him better. But maybe it'd be a good start. Before he could reach out to grab the set, a shadow fell over the display. Naruto's hand froze midair. A large man stepped into his peripheral vision, towering over the rack. Muscular, with shoulders like a wall and arms thick with power, the stranger had a face carved from stone and a body littered with old battle scars, some healed, some still visible in pale jagged lines. His expression was unreadable. But his eyes were sharp. Naruto instinctively stepped back, feeling the weight of the man's presence before he even said a word. It didn't take long for the man to speak, his low controlled voice stern and calm while looking down at the blonde. "What's a child like you doing in this place?" the man said, his deep voice rumbling like thunder. "A green shinobi in my shop, as if he knows what he needs?" Naruto blinked, his hand still half extended. "Huh. I mean, yeah, I guess, the basic pack is better than what I already have. We were taught to choose for ourselves in class, for our own styles." In a classroom, the man cut in, testing the balance of a kunai in his hand. "Not in a fight. Let me see how you hold a kunai." He tossed the kunai lightly. Naruto caught it, clumsy at first, then shifted it in his palm, trying a few angles. The man watched closely, not judging, just observing. Naruto frowned, adjusting his grip. Once he found the grip he was taught, he kept it held like that, even though it felt uncomfortable. That gained a grimier from the older man, like a sound of annoyed disappointment. "You're holding it like a tool," he called out quickly. "You're supposed to hold it like it's part of you." Naruto widened his eyes, looking at the man for a second before deciding to reposition himself. The advice wasn't that specific, but he guessed it just meant what way felt most natural instead of a definite style. Okay, he could see what the man means. If he twists his wrist here, it feels more natural. He didn't say anything, but the man must have noticed the subtle shift. "Better," he muttered. "But you're still green." Before Naruto could ask more, the man turned and handed him a basic shinobi tool pouch. Although this one was labeled as extra, meaning it had more tools in there, everything was doubled. He guessed that was fine. He was trying to change a bit anyway. "Try not to blow yourself up," the man added gruffly, motioning with his head. "Come on." Naruto followed him, a little stunned, as they walked through a short hallway leading back to the front of the store. There, Ten was waiting. She had everything neatly laid out: the black, sleeveless puff jacket Naruto had been admiring, some matching black shorts, durable sandals, and even a dark cloth to replace the bright blue one tied around his forehead. "Finally," she said with a small smile. "Thought you two got into a duel or something." The man gave a grunt. "He's still in one piece, good enough." Naruto glanced between them, gears slowly turning in his head. "Wait, is he your—" "Yup, my dad," Ten confirmed with a nod, then gave a teasing grin. "Don't worry, he's scary to everyone at first." The man crossed his arms. "Only to the ones who need it." Naruto chuckled nervously, rubbing the back of his head. As the scarred man stepped behind the counter without another word, Naruto remained standing for a second, blinking in mild confusion before turning toward Ten instead. She gave him a knowing look as she carefully folded the black puff jacket and other items onto the counter. Naruto scratched his cheek and chuckled awkwardly. He seems like someone who's been through a lot of battles." "I mean, he doesn't really look like your dad, though." He paused, the words registering a second too late. "Wait, crap, that sounded super rude. Sorry, I didn't mean it like that." Ten laughed, waving him off. "Don't worry about it, I've heard way worse." She looked over at her father, who seemed too focused on some inventory paperwork to care. Then her voice softened with a hint of fondness. "I'm adopted. He came to the Leaf when I was around 5, from what I know. His own village tossed him out, treated him like a weapon and nothing more. So he came here and started over." She patted the counter with a smile. "That's why it's called Ginkaku Tools. His name's Ginkaku, no relation to those Ginkaku and Kinkaku, before you ask." Naruto's eyes widened. "Wait, Ginkaku, like, the Ginkaku, the blacksmith who made the 4th Hokage's tri-prong kunai?" At this, Ginkaku let out a gruff exhale that might have been a snort. "Stop giving away my whole life story," he muttered without looking up. "Finish the transaction." Ten just grinned and leaned in, whispering dramatically loud enough for him to hear. "He acts tough, but under that cold exterior, he's just a big softy." A low, unmistakable grumble came from behind the counter. Naruto tried, and failed, to suppress a grin. Ten started ringing everything up, counting the puff jacket, shorts, sandals, headband cloth, and basic tools pack. She jotted down a total, and Naruto leaned in to see. His jaw didn't drop, but it tensed. The price wasn't unfair, honestly. It was probably discounted considering the quality, but it was still steep. He reached into his pocket and pulled out his beloved green-toed wallet, Gamakan. He opened it slowly, eyeing the thick wad of Ryo he had saved up over months of odd jobs and sparing missions. So much for savings, he thought with a quiet sigh. But, it's worth it, and at least they're not jacking up the price just because I'm me. Without hesitation, he handed over the cash. Tenten blinked. You sure, that's almost everything in your wallet? Naruto gave a small, confident smile. Better gear means I get to train harder and be stronger, that's worth it. She nodded, clearly impressed, and slid the bundle of his new equipment toward him. As Naruto tucked his new gear into the bag, Tenten leaned over the counter with a bright smile. Since this is your first time buying real shinobi gear, you know what that means, right? Naruto blinked. What? She grinned. It means this place should be your go-to from now on. You've got good taste already, and maybe, if you keep coming back, my old man might even make you a custom weapon one day. Naruto's eyes widened with a sparkle of excitement. That'd be awesome, this place is amazing. Even the basic gear feels 100 times better than the dull junk I had. He turned to the entrance, gear in hand, and gave Tenten a grateful smile. Thanks, Tenten, I'll definitely come back. She gave a playful salute. Looking forward to it, Naruto. With that, he gave a final wave and was about to step away from the counter, then paused. A thought hitting him. He turned back around. Actually, there's one more thing. Tenten raised a brow, giving him her attention again. I don't have much training with shuriken jutsu. Honestly, I was dead last in the academy, and I only passed because of a technicality. He scratched the back of his head with a nervous grin. You've clearly been a shinobi longer than me, and you seem like you really know your stuff, so, I was wondering, think you could help me train a bit? Tenten blinked, taken aback for a second. Then her stance shifted slightly, a bit more squared. You want me to train you? Naruto nodded, just some pointers, I need to get better, fast. And I figured, well, you work in a weapon shop, and you knew about the gear, so why not ask? For a moment, she was quiet, her expression unreadable. Then she gave a light laugh, not mocking, but thoughtful. You're serious about this, huh? Completely. Tenten crossed her arms, a subtle smirk forming. Well, I guess I'm strong enough to train someone now, that's kind of cool to think about. Naruto grinned at that, so, does that mean yes? Yeah, sure, you seem like you'll put in the work. She stepped around the counter, grabbing a small scroll from a side shelf. Go to Training Ground 17, it's not too crowded. Has plenty of targets, and more space than the others. I'll meet you there tomorrow morning. Naruto's face lit up, really, you're the best. Tenten rolled her eyes with a grin, just don't expect me to go easy on you, I don't train slackers. I'm not a slacker, I'm just, new. New and overly dramatic, she teased, waving him toward the door. Naruto gave a laugh as he headed out, see you at Training Ground 17. Bright and early, she called after him, already turning back to organize the counter. The next morning came faster than Naruto expected. He stood near the entrance of Training Ground 17, shifting in his new gear as the early morning breeze passed through the trees. The black sleeveless puff jacket fit snug over his chest, giving his upper body a bit of bounce and looseness that, surprisingly, worked well with the strange flexibility of his new rubber-like muscles. The black shorts and sandals were comfortable, light, and allowed for quick movement. Even his headband, now tied with a strip of black cloth, felt more secure than before. He caught his reflection in a puddle near the path and gave himself a small nod. Way better than the jumpsuit, he muttered. Still me, just smarter me. He adjusted the kunai pouch strapped to his side, new, clean, and filled with proper tools this time. The basic ninja pack from yesterday felt like a huge upgrade over the old dull weapons he used to carry. His aim still sucked, but that was why he was here. His thoughts drifted to Tenten. She was confident in a way that didn't feel showy, sharp eyes, steady hands, and a smirk that made it clear she knew how good she was. He hadn't met many people like her. Most villagers either ignored him or gave him dirty looks. But she didn't flinch, she didn't judge, she talked to him like he was just normal. Did she know about what, or who he was? Naruto quickly discarded that thought, deciding not to think on it. Aside from that, he couldn't help but wonder how strong she actually was. If her dad really made the fourth Hokage's kunai, then she must have grown up around some seriously skilled people. She's probably crazy good with throwing stuff, he mumbled, eyes drifting toward the wooden targets ahead. Good, that means I've got a lot to learn. His fist clenched in excitement, he was finally a shinobi. And even if he had a weird fruit power and a mountain of things stacked against him, he wasn't going to let that slow him down. Not anymore, and with that, he stepped into the clearing of Training Ground 17, waiting for Tenten to arrive. While he waited, Naruto decided to do his own kind of training. It was time to really see what his rubber body could do. Sure, against Mizuki he'd thrown wild, rubber-powered punches in his usual brawler style, but if he was serious about changing, that recklessness had to go. Being rubber didn't mean he could just flail and hope it worked. He remembered that night clearly. Some of his clones had accidentally dispelled each other with poorly aimed punches. The power had been there, but not the control. He had won with sheer numbers, but Naruto knew that wouldn't always cut it. If he wanted to fight smarter, not just harder, he needed to understand how to actually throw a punch with these new powers. So, he started testing his brawler style on a worn-down wooden post. His fists and kicks flew with force, but the results were rough. He missed nearly every blow, his rubber limbs either stretched too far, curved the wrong way, or didn't stretch at all. Every strike felt off. The more he trained, the more obvious it became, what he thought was a strength might also be a serious weakness. His usual instincts were clashing with the new flexibility of his body. His timing was off, his range unpredictable, and his control shaky at best. It was frustrating. Each miss, each awkward extension, showed how far he was from mastering this power. His brawler instincts just didn't fit with how his body moved now. If he wanted to improve, he'd need a new approach. A new style. Something that worked with his rubber body instead of against it. And that meant starting from the beginning, learning how to truly direct and control this strange, elastic strength. Bit by bit, Naruto started to piece something together, a bastardized version of his old brawler style. It wasn't clean. It wasn't pretty. But it was his. With a bit more focus, a bit more restraint, he managed to land a few solid punches on the wooden post. His rubber limbs stopped flailing so wildly. The movements weren't as powerful as before, but at least they hit. It was a start. Still, he knew this patchwork version of his old fighting method wouldn't hold up in a real battle. Maybe it would work on someone like Choji or even Shino, opponents who didn't rely heavily on close-quarters combat. But against someone like Sasuke, or worse, whatever Jonin got assigned as his squad leader, he'd be dead meat. The truth stung more than any missed punch. His brawler style had always felt instinctual, like it was the one thing he had that belonged to him. But now, with distance and clarity, he was starting to see the cracks that had always been there. Flaws built into the very core of the style he'd used for years. It hadn't been a coincidence. It was a ploy, put in place by his academy sensei before Iruka. Meant to hold him back, to make him easier to ignore. Easier to control, easier to discard. If Iruka hadn't stepped in when he did, Naruto probably wouldn't have made it this far. His last-minute help had patched up some of the holes, but not all of them. And now, with his body completely changed, Naruto's bastardized style was even more unstable than before, sloppy foundation, sloppier follow-through. He needed something to build off of. A style that worked with his rubber body, not against it. He didn't want to give up being a brawler, that part of him was real, honest. But it was clear that his current level wasn't going to cut it. He'd need to blend it with something else. Something tighter, more precise. A style that gave him structure, without stripping away the unpredictability he was known for. Because as things stood now, his fighting style wasn't just outdated. It was useless. His thoughts were cut off by the sound of footsteps approaching. Naruto looked up just as Tenten finally arrived, a calm but curious look on her face. "How long have you been out here?" she asked, then waved the question away with a smirk. "You know what, doesn't matter, you're really dedicated." Naruto gave a sheepish chuckle, wiping a bit of sweat from his brow. "Just trying to work through a few things. My fighting style has some cracks I've been trying to fix." He kept it vague, no mention of rubber limbs or the bizarre powers that now made even simple punches unpredictable. The less people knew, the better, at least for now. Tenten gave him a look, not pushing for details. Instead, she nodded. "I know someone who might be able to help with that at some point. But that's not what today's about. Right now, you need to focus on preparing." Preparing? Naruto blinked, confused. "For what?" "For the real test," she said, crossing her arms. "The academy graduation doesn't mean you're a genin yet, not truly. Whichever jonin gets assigned to your team will test you first. And if they decide," Naruto's eyes widened a bit. "Wait, what? That's not fair." "Life as a shinobi isn't fair," she said simply, not unkindly. "They don't want kids who can pass paper exams. They want people who can survive in the field. That's why the jonin test is the real one. A lot of people fail it." Her words settled like a rock in his stomach. He'd fought hard to get to this point, worked through sabotage, isolation, and his own limits, the idea that it still might not be enough. But then he looked down at his wrapped fists, the faint marks of rubber stretch still clinging to his arms. Good, he didn't want it to be easy. He looked back up at her and grinned, "Then I'll pass it, no matter what." Tenten chuckled, "You've got that loudmouth confidence down, let's see if you can back it up." Tenten wasted no time once their conversation ended. She pulled a small leather pouch from her belt, untied it, and revealed several clean, well-balanced kunai. She handed one to Naruto with a firm look. "Let's start with the basics: grip, stance, breathing, everything matters," she said as she stepped behind him. "You've probably been chucking these like darts, huh?" Naruto gave a crooked grin. "That obvious?" Tenten smirked. "Don't worry, most academy students do, but we're going to fix that." She moved with practiced ease, adjusting his elbow slightly and shifting his weight onto his back foot. With each throw, she gave clear and direct feedback, correcting his grip, his wrist movement, the angle of his shoulder. It was all sharp, efficient, and strangely methodical, like she'd done this dozens of times before. Naruto stumbled a lot at first. His kunai spun out too early, veered wide, or dropped flat. But with every correction, he learned, he wasn't just taking her advice at face value, either. Every tip, every detail about how to control his throw, how to manage the momentum, he stored it away, mentally reshaping her lessons into something he could apply to his rubber body. She thought she was just teaching him accuracy, but to Naruto, this was more than that. It was control. He experimented quietly between their breaks, twisting his arm just enough to cause a subtle stretch before the release, noting how the trajectory changed with different amounts of tension. His aim started sharpening faster than even he expected. By late afternoon, the dull thunk of kunai hitting their marks echoed steadily through the training ground. Tenten folded her arms as she watched him nail 3 targets in a row. "Not bad," she said, eyebrows raised with faint surprise. "You learn faster than I thought." Naruto grinned, panting slightly but proud. Guess I had a good teacher. Tenten rolled her eyes, but she didn't hide the small smile tugging at her lips. The sun had started to dip just a bit lower, casting a soft amber glow over the village rooftops. The day's training had left a light ache in Naruto's arms, but his stomach was doing most of the complaining now. When Tenten asked if he wanted to grab something to eat, his answer came out faster than he could even think. They turned a corner, and Naruto's eyes lit up the moment the familiar red awning came into view. The comforting scent of miso and pork broth drifted out into the street like a warm welcome home. "Welcome," came the familiar voice of Tucci, the owner, the moment Naruto ducked under the curtain. "Yo, old man," Naruto beamed, stepping inside like it was second nature. Ayam peeked out from behind the counter, her hands full with bowls. "Well, if it isn't our favorite ramen-addicted troublemaker." Naruto laughed, scratching the back of his head. "Hey, I've been behaving lately." Tucci grinned, which means something really must be wrong. That got a quiet chuckle from Tenten as she stepped in behind him, watching the casual way Naruto bantered with the two. The familiarity, the comfort, this wasn't just a shop to him, it was his spot. Ayam leaned forward with a sly smile, eyes shifting between the two of them. "You bringing a girl here now, Naruto, is this a date?" Naruto nearly choked on his own breath. What? No, it's not like that." Tenten raised an eyebrow, half smirking. "Wow, 1 foot in the shop and I'm already getting dragged into your reputation." Ayam winked. "Just saying, ramen's a solid first date food." Ayam," Naruto groaned, his cheeks turning just a little red. Tenten gave a low laugh and followed him to the counter, choosing a seat beside him. "Relax, I can take a joke, dead last." That jab earned a playful scowl from Naruto. That nickname's gonna get real old, real fast. As they sat, Tucci wiped his hands on a towel. "You want your usual, Naruto?" Naruto gave a nod, "Yeah, extra pork." "And for you?" Ayam asked, already setting water in front of them. "I'll take whatever he's having," Tenten said, a hint of curiosity in her voice. Ayam raised a brow, brave. Tenten shrugged, "I've survived my dad's cooking, I'll be fine." Naruto chuckled, but his mind was still catching up from earlier. That teasing, was she just playing along? Did she mind coming here with me? The way she laughed, the way she sat beside him like it wasn't weird at all, it was different, good different. Maybe she was just being polite, maybe not, he didn't know. All he knew was that Ichiraku felt a little warmer than usual tonight. The kitchen clattered behind the counter as Tucci and Ayam got to work, the scent of simmering broth already drifting through the air. The shop felt quiet in the best way, cozy and tucked away from the rest of the village. Naruto leaned forward on the counter, idly spinning his chopsticks between his fingers. "So," he said, glancing sideways at Tenten. "Be honest, I'm guessing this place doesn't compare to all your fancy weapon stores and training spots, huh?" Tenten raised an eyebrow, "You think I eat in armories?" He blinked, maybe. She gave a dry laugh, "Please, you think I sharpen kunai and chew metal for dinner?" Naruto snorted, half choking on his water, "Kinda." "You've got a weird imagination," she said, shaking her head with a grin. "But I guess I shouldn't be surprised." "You're not the first person to tell me that," Naruto said proudly, puffing his chest a little. They shared a laugh, one of those easy, relaxed ones that came without effort. Tenten tapped a finger against the counter lightly, looking thoughtful now. "So," she said after a beat, "what kind of ninja do you actually want to be?" Naruto blinked, the question catching him mid-smile. He leaned back a little, folding his arms behind his head as he thought. "I want to be the kind that fights head-on," he said. "Like, full speed ahead, no hesitation. I want to learn all kinds of jutsu too. Big ones, flashy ones, stuff that makes people go, whoa, you know?" Tenten raised an eyebrow. You wanna be a walking explosion. He grinned, pretty much. But even as he said it, something tugged at him, a quiet, uncertain voice reminding him that the kind of ninja he used to want to be might not match who he was now. Can I even use flashy jutsu with this rubber body, he wondered, will I ever be that kind of fighter? He pushed the thought aside and turned the question back on her. What about you, what kind of ninja do you want to be? Tenten smiled, straightening a little in her seat, a weapons master. Naruto blinked, like, just good at kunai and stuff? She gave a mock-offended scoff, excuse me, just kunai, I've trained with blades, staves, scroll weapons, chains, and more. I've spent more time in weapon scrolls than some people spend breathing. Naruto laughed, alright, I get it, you're not just the kunai girl, Tenten chuckled, pleased with herself, exactly. A short, comfortable silence settled between them. The kind that came after shared laughter. Naruto looked over at her again, her posture relaxed, a small smile on her face, like this kind of conversation was just as natural as throwing a kunai. He found himself smiling too, without even realizing it. A soft silence stretched between them, filled only by the quiet sounds of the kitchen behind the counter. Ayam was chatting with her father, the bubbling broth masking their voices. Naruto shifted slightly, still grinning faintly from their earlier joke. He felt, weirdly at ease, like the weight on his shoulders was lighter, just for a bit. That's when Tenten turned slightly toward him. Can I ask you something, she said. He blinked, sure. You've been training hard, way harder than most people who just graduated. She paused, considering her words, why are you trying to change so fast? Her tone wasn't accusatory, it was curious, thoughtful. But the question hit him like a sudden drop. Naruto hesitated, his smile faded a little, and he scratched the back of his head. Ah, well. Tenten looked at him gently but didn't press, she just waited. You already knew, he muttered. Knew what? She asked, though the glint in her eyes said she did. Who I am, I mean, what people say about me, Naruto clarified. The prankster, the screw-up, the kid who couldn't even make a clone right. Tenten looked down for a moment, yeah, I knew. Naruto exhaled, almost a laugh, but it didn't reach his eyes, guess it's kinda hard not to. There was a beat of quiet before he added, more quietly, I passed because of a technicality. I only got this far because of one weird night and a lot of luck, but I don't want to stay like this. His hand rested lightly against the counter, fingers curling inward. I want to get stronger, be someone people can count on. I don't want to be the dead last anymore. I want to be more aware, more than just a joke. Tenten looked at him with quiet understanding. I figured, she said. You showed it, back at the shop, when you were looking at the swords. You didn't touch them like a kid playing with toys. You looked like you were thinking about them, seriously. Naruto glanced at her, eyes widening slightly. She smiled, then leaned back, her voice lighter. Besides, I didn't mention it before, but I used to want to be just like Tsunade. He blinked. Who? Tenten gave a surprised look. Lady Tsunade, she barked, the greatest healer to ever come out of Konoha, or the world for that matter. Naruto then let anything in his face show, seeing that he didn't recognize who she was talking about, Tenten just continued. She is the strongest kunoichi in history. Smart, powerful, unbeatable. I even tried learning healing techniques. What happened? I sucked at it, she said bluntly, then laughed. Couldn't focus, too much chakra control, not enough patience. Naruto snorted at that. But that didn't mean I couldn't be great at something else. I realized I could still be a great kunoichi, just not in the way I first imagined. She rested her hands on the counter, I focus on my weapons, my skill, my speed, I work at it every day. Naruto listened closely, her words pulling at something inside him. You know, she said, you don't have to be good at shuriken jutsu. Naruto blinked, huh? I mean it, she continued, amused by his surprise. Everyone acts like you need to be amazing at the academy basics, transformation, substitution, perfect kunai aim, but that's not everything. Not everyone becomes a great ninja by following a checklist. Naruto slurped the last of his noodles and leaned in slightly, listening. You've got other strengths, she said, resting her elbow on the counter and pointing lightly at him. You're unpredictable, you think outside the box, that's more dangerous than perfect aim in the right situation. She leaned back, smirking, like that thing you tried earlier, with the kunai ricochet. I've been throwing weapons for years and I've never once thought to try something like that. Naruto blinked, remembering how dumb that move felt when it didn't work. It didn't even hit the target. Sure, it didn't work this time, but it was creative. If you figure out how to make it work consistently, that's your style, that's something no one else has. He stared at her for a moment, not quite sure what to say. His chest gave a weird flutter, not nervous, not embarrassed, just something. She gave a softer smile now. I'm not saying don't get better, you should work hard, take it more seriously, but don't lose what makes you, well, you. Your imagination, your weird way of thinking, even your pranks, I bet those help your planning skills more than any academy drill did. Naruto looked down at his hands. You really think that stuff matters? I do, she said without hesitation. And honestly, I think you're going to surprise a lot of people. You just have to trust yourself, and keep moving forward without letting everyone else's mold shape you. He didn't answer right away, something about hearing those words from her, it stirred something in him. Warmth climbed into his cheeks, not enough to show, but just enough to make his thoughts stumble. Tenten's really cool, he thought. The way she spoke, confident, genuine, easy to talk to, made his chest feel tight again. Not in the heavy way it used to, in a different way. He caught himself watching the way she smiled. How she laughed earlier, how seriously she took her dream. And for a moment, just a second, he thought he understood that feeling curling up in his stomach. But he pushed it down. Focus, he told himself, she's helping you train. That's all. Still, her words echoed in his head. Don't lose what makes you, you. A lull settled between them, neither was in a rush to speak. The bustle of Ichiraku continued around them, bowls clinking, Ayam's voice calling out a new order, Tucci humming behind the counter. Naruto swirled the last bit of broth in his bowl with his chopsticks, thinking. He turned toward her, eyes a little more serious now. Hey, Tenten. She looked over. What do you think being a shinobi really means? The question came out quieter than he expected, like he was still figuring out what exactly he was asking. Tenten blinked, caught off guard, then looked down at her bowl. That's a big question, she said softly. Most people would say duty, service to the village, protecting your comrades, that stuff. She let the silence stretch for a second more before shaking her head lightly. But for me, it's not just about duty, it's about freedom, kind of, about becoming something, doing something with my life that's mine. Naruto watched her, silent. She glanced back at him. I guess it's kind of like my own adventure. She must have noticed his expression because she immediately laughed and waved it off. Okay, that sounded dumb out loud, huh? Naruto blinked. That wasn't dumb, not even a little. No, Naruto said quickly, a small grin forming. Actually, that sounded kinda awesome. He paused, letting her words settle. Tenten tilted her head. What about you, what do you think it means? Naruto leaned back, arms crossed behind his head, looking up toward the awning. I don't know, he admitted with a lopsided smile. Not yet, but I'm gonna figure it out. And in that moment, he meant it. Maybe he didn't have a clear answer, not like her. But hearing her talk about her dream, her journey, gave him something to hold on to. He didn't need to know everything now, he just needed to keep moving. Just like Tenten said, forward. That's it for today. I hope you liked the video. Please like and subscribe, and comment ideas if you can, and maybe you could share this with your friends, because you never know, they might like what ifs too. So without further ado, AllKage, out.